Marine Corps veteran. I joined the Marine Corps in 1964 and went to boot camp. Well, I actually joined on the 90-day delay program, so I enlisted in April of '64, and in June 25th I reported to summer camp, where I was met by a funny-looking counselor with a funny-looking Smokey the Bear hat. It was a very interesting summer. Graduated from high school, had a month at home, went straight to boot camp. Probably weighed about 125, 130, and stood 5'7" when I went to boot camp, and about 10, 12 weeks later, out of boot camp, I was 5'9" and 170 pounds. So I guess the boot camp, the hard training, the good food, and everything else, shall we say, took advantage of that last growth spurt and kicked it into high gear. Following boot camp, I went to infantry training at Camp Pendleton, California, and upon return from leave over the Christmas holidays in '64, I went back to Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego, where I became a student in the Marine Corps Electronics School. I went through basic electronics school, radar fundamentals, and a radar terminal course on TPS-22 radar. So I was a radar technician at that point. Toward the end of the year of '65, I was transferred up to Naval Air Station Alameda, California, where I was on the staff of the Marine Corps Reserve Training Detachment up there that sponsored a squadron flying A-4 aircraft primarily. So we also had a small radar site, and the radar that was in use there was manufactured before I was born. It was used in Korea. It was one of the mainline radars. Very interesting. But I never did get a chance to go and work on the modern radar that I had been schooled on, because about 5-6 months after I went to Alameda, I was selected for participation in the Naval Enlisted Scientific Education Program, which I had applied for in radar school, and was sent to San Diego again, to the Naval Training Center, for what they call NESEP prep school, basically a high school refresher, and to kind of gin up the students, the selectees, for entry into college. So in about August of '66, I think it was, I reported to Purdue University, where I attended for 4 years and graduated with a degree, a bachelor's degree in industrial management, minored in computer science.
Wow.
Upon graduation, see, in the summer of '68, halfway through college, I went to Quantico for 6 weeks for the senior portion of the Officers Candidate School. And upon graduation in May of '70, I was commissioned second lieutenant.
Very impressive.
Shortly thereafter, I ended up going to Quantico and checked in for 6 months of the basic school, where all Marine officers go for infantry, basic infantry training. And upon graduation there, I went to communication officers orientation course. It was only about 12 weeks long. And at that time, while I was still in basic school, I met my wife. And so I became engaged and finished basic school, finished officers communication school, and was transferred down to Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point. So once I checked in there, I returned north to my wife's home up in Ashland, Virginia, where we got married in July 10th of '71. I was Cherry Point, became the communications officer for the 3rd Light and Aircraft Missile Battalion, and I served with them for about a year. Then I was transferred to the Marine Air Control Group 2-8, which oversaw the Land Battalion, the Marine Air Control Squadron, the Marine Air Support Squadron, and a couple of other squadrons within the group that provided primarily the ground support portion of the air wing. I was there till 73. In 73, I was drew orders to Camp Garcia in Vieques, Puerto Rico. In September of 73, I went down to Vieques, Puerto Rico. And I served down there a year as the camp's legal admin officer, motor transport officer, and about 5 or 6 other little jobs here and there that, you know, on inventory boards and offline crypto boards and things like that. All stuff that I had been trained on, and so everybody gets kind of cross-pollinated and cross-referenced there. Let's see, 74, I returned to Cherry Point. I'd accepted an assignment at the base headquarters and 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing headquarters building, where I was the communications officer for the base. I ran the base communications center. It's about the 2nd or 3rd largest communications center in the Marine Corps at the time, thanks to some of the tenant activities at Cherry Point, including one of the bigger logistics and defense supply center locations in a naval air reaver facility and things of this nature. So it was kind of a big operation. It ran 24/7, 365, and it was a very, very busy time. See, my son was born in 74, and it was in the fall of 76 when I received orders as one of 2 captains to attend the Combat Communications Officers course at Fort Gordon, Georgia, the Army's course. So I went there for 6 months. Took my family, had a nice little apartment, enjoyed myself thoroughly. Met a Brazilian major and his wife. They were newlyweds, and so we sponsored them and remain friends to this day. In 77, August of the year, I reported up here to the Marine Corps, to the Naval Amphibious School at Little Creek. And there I was on the staff of the amphibious school as the communications instructor. But during that time I also picked up instructing in naval gunfire spotters, liaison officers, and took over the logistics and management of the department's security program and arranged for the logistic operations of the Naval Gunnery Range at Wadsworth Island. And we had a good old time there. We would fly up, spend 3 days, 10 days, with a team of about 4 or 5 Marines. We had a bunkhouse and we had a range tower. We would fly up, and the Navy would fly us up in their CH-46 helicopters, drop us on the pad next to our compound. We'd unload our cargo, and then they'd fly back to Yorktown and pick up a pallet or 2 of ammunition for our 81mm mortar, fly that up and drop it off. And we would be on our own. We had to bring all of our own food, all of our own water, in 5-gallon cans, everything, because there was nothing on that island, and we were marooned basically up there. Our recourse in emergency would have been to call Patuxent Naval Air Station. They were only 20 miles away. We could see them across the horizon, and they could fly one of their search and rescue birds down to help us if we needed it. Otherwise we were on our own. And we'd set up our spotting equipment and our mortar, and we would conduct Comnaf Surf Lance Gunsmoke Manual, is what they call it, their short fire bombardment exercise regime. During the time I was there, I helped rewrite the Naval Gunfire Spotters Manual and a number of other things as part of a member of the team that was within my supporting arms department. It was a very good time. I was placed on T-80 orders to the Marine Amphibious Unit, the 32nd Marine Amphibious Unit. In the Marine Corps, we always have two MOUs, or MUs now, they call them Marine Expeditionary Units. One is always in the Mediterranean. The other one is, or two in this case, or sometimes back stateside, being reorganized, reworked, requalified, and do their exercise workups for deployment into the midst. So we almost constantly rotating these MUs around. Well, we went in to the Med, checked into Rota. We were supposed to go on a very nice cruise. There's all sorts of wonderful places. We were supposed to go to Palma, Mallorca. I'm trying to think of it. San Remo, Italy. Just some beautiful, beautiful places. You know, wonderful liberty ports. We were supposed to spend a week in Rota doing our, what they call in-chop. And in 3 days we were doing 20 knots heading east toward Beirut, Lebanon. And we arrived off the coast of Beirut and started doing gator squares, just cruising around in circles out there, waiting for the State Department and other people to get organized for the multinational force that ended up going into Beirut and kind of brokering the evacuation of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Yasser Arafat's group. Eventually we were put into the port area where we established a perimeter, and the PLO would come in by truck and we would get them on to loaded onto the various ferries and shipping that was take them to all over North Africa and various places, get them out of Beirut. That was the general idea, because well, West Beirut was a disaster at that time. It had been pretty well leveled. After the PLO was evacuated, we went back aboard ship, and eventually we ended up in Naples, where it was supposed to be 2 weeks. Well, 6 days later, we were doing 20 knots back toward Beirut because things had deteriorated, diplomatically and otherwise. And we ended up doing gator squares off the coast of Beirut for 83 days. Finally, and we only got hit once with an aircraft round. It bounced off the deck, but it scared the poor guys that were up there running and doing their PT. Scared them badly. But the PLO had a habit of just pointing guns in the air and just lighting them off. And there was all sorts of remnants of PLO. It was not a good situation at all. Eventually we were put ashore at the international airport. So we flew in by helicopter and moved into a building. We were there about 2-3 days, and it was the working with the Lebanese, we were directed to move to another building. So following those negotiations, we moved from one wrecked building into another wrecked building. The buildings were a real disaster. The one we ended up in finally became the Marine Amphibious Unit's headquarters. And the building that was eventually bombed, the BLT headquarters, was about 150 meters south of us, between us and the International Airport terminal itself. We had moved into what was a crash crew building. There were 4 big engine bays, and one end of it was a air crew training school, safety training center. They had a mock-up airplane overhead, and they had the slides with the inflatable slides and all to teach the air crews how to get passengers out, all those good things. And out of those beautiful, beautiful 4 Sterling, British Sterling crash trucks. All of them had been, they looked like Swiss cheese. They'd been shot up. They'd been sitting there for 8 years. All the drivetrain gaskets and bearings and everything, seals had worn out. And all the lube oil leaked all over this beautiful terracotta tile floor and baked on. And then it was covered with glass and bandages and cartridges. And it was a real mess. We went in there and we shoveled all this stuff up, cleaned it, scrubbed it. And finally, when it was clean enough, I let the people move back in. They set up their cots, and that's where we lived. Took all the windows, and we sandbagged them, and we used cardboard, block off the wind and everything else, so we could have a place that was halfway decent to live and keep some warmth in there in the winter. And also to provide us with some fragmentation protection, should we get shelled or something along those lines. And we were there until we were relieved by the Marine Amphibious Unit that we were rotating with, which would have been the 24th mile. While I was there when they blew up the U.S. Embassy. In fact, I was on the roof of that building the night before they blew it up. But one of my routines was to do the Presidential Palace, go by jeep to the Presidential Palace, check out the communications, everything there, then go to the U.S. Embassy, and then return to base. I did that every other day or so. And every day I went up into the control tower and supported the Navy TACRON people up there that were controlling military flights in and out of the airport area. It was an interesting time. When my unit came off the ground in Beirut the second time, it was August, September of '83. We passed control over to the 24th mile and came back stateside. It was after my second deployment in Beirut. So I finished my second rotation, went back to Camp Lejeune, and it was October 23rd, 6 a.m. in the morning, Sunday morning, when the BLT, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, I believe it was hit with that big bomb in the headquarters building there, their headquarters in Beirut. When I returned stateside, I was assigned to Com Company Headquarters Battalion of the 2nd Marine Division. And so that's where I spent my last 11 months in the Marine Corps. And I retired 30 June of '81, 30 June of '84. Took 30 days of the terminal leave, came on home, and they mailed me everything else that I needed, because I didn't stand on formality as far as a fancy retirement parade or any of that stuff. I just came on, I want to be home with my family. So we had a long time. It was a good career. I learned an awful lot. I got kicked around a little bit. I discovered that the truth does not always make you free. It's sometimes held against you. And I think that kind of played in my failure for selection to major one time. But I learned one thing. When a door closes in your face, if you have faith, God opens another door.
Amen.
And He directs you in the direction you should go.